Well, here we are. I've finally officially made it big. Big time podcaster now. No. Anyways, thanks guys for coming on. This is another show of Well That's Something podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hilton. First of all, I want to thank Legacy Insurance for having me on here.
Yeah.
Like, this is really cool. Like, it's, we did this show here with your show, The Professionals.
Yes, sir.
And that was super fun. But so you guys talk about your podcast that you guys do. I know we've talked about it before, but now I have both of you here to explain. So how'd you guys meet?
We met at the gym.
Yeah.
Andrew, he works there, and I'd see him, super friendly guy. And one day he came up to me. He was starting his photography career, and he took some pictures, and he was just doing some social media stuff. And so we just kind of became friendly. And Andrew, you listen to a lot of podcasts.
So, from my point of view, George told me some pretty extravagant stories, and I was like, I don't know, man.
You were really into podcasting.
Correct.
You said that when we had the conversation,
yeah.
You said you were that's what helped you through some rough times.
Absolutely.
But were you specifically into crime shows?
No, not even close.
What were you into?
I knew that those were a big deal, and I had no desire to listen to them. No, I was into movie-based podcasts, movie reviews, and a lot of the podcasts I listened to at this time, and what got me into podcasts were people who would review bad movies. They would make limelight of bad movies and talk about them, and basically discuss why did this get made? How did this get made? Why would someone make this? Yeah. And half the time they're movies that I secretly really liked, so it's just cool to hear them talk about it.
That's cool. So you just met up at the gym and...
Yeah, and Andrew, I think you listened to Helen Gone, right?
I was told that you were on some podcasts and that you were the big reporter and one of the big leads who helped discover Rebecca Gould's information on Rebecca Gould. He was very adamant on that case. Mm-hmm. And I was told that he's been on podcasts about it. But again, it's not that I didn't believe him, but I was just like, man, this sounds so crazy. Mm. And then I listened to Helagon, and by the second episode, which is about Rebecca Gould, the second episode, he's on it till the end of the season. I'm like, well, this man's not lying.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there you go.
And that, I think, and I may be mistaken, it was one of the top 5 podcasts in the United States in 2018.
Really?
And it was one of the top true crime podcasts in the world for sure. And kind of what happened is Andrew approached me one day and said, have you ever thought about maybe doing a podcast of your own? Because I'd been on so many.
And you were like...
No, I told him no. I said, never thought about it. It wasn't even a thought in my head.
Why the hesitation?
Because I didn't know. It's a lot of time. Mm-hmm. Doing one interview is time consuming, and I have to rearrange my life to do one interview.
Right. Well,
so
you're already busy, dude.
Yeah. So to do a bunch of episodes would be a time commitment. And I'll just be honest with you, I thought, okay, I'm kind of at a point in my life where a lot of things, if I'm going to spend a lot of time doing it, I either want it to be financially rewarding or personally rewarding. Right. And I didn't know if doing a podcast would be. And I tell this story very famously.
Now, did you listen to any podcasts at all?
I listened to a couple. Yeah. I listened to a podcast called Criminal.
Okay.
And This Is Love, which is Phoebe Judge. She does both of them. She's the host for both, and they're both really good. And I listened to Someone Knows Something. It's funny because I really, I write a lot about true crime, but I don't watch and consume a lot of true crime. But as I got into podcasting, that's kind of the ones I gravitated towards. I do listen to Joe Rogan some. I do like him. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think. But yeah, no, it's funny now that we're doing a podcast, I've started to listen to I'll say this, I listen to the Legacy Lowdown podcast now, which, we're obviously in their studio today. I listen to my good friends at the United States Murder podcast. Mm-hmm. They're based in Little Rock.
Is that all local? I mean, I know Legacy because we're here. But
yeah, no, they're based in Little Rock. Mm-hmm. Ashley and Lacey, they're good friends of ours, and so we listen to theirs quite a bit. And so one day I just called in or texted him, I think, out of the blue, and I said, hey, I think I want to do a podcast. And
Andrew was like, I think I love you.
I
cried. I legit cried. I was at work, and I teared up because I was just like, this is the opportunity. And we set up I think he texted me on a Thursday, and then the following Thursday we met up and kind of laid down some ground ideas. He told me what he was thinking, and I know nothing about true crime at this point. I do because my fiance at the time, now wife, loves it, so she consumes it like crazy.
So what have you? Sorry, I'm cutting you off here.
You really did cut me off as a host.
I did. I'm sorry. Now, what have you learned from him? So you know nothing about true crime podcasting? What have you learned from him, like kind of, or vice versa, about podcasting?
So from George, learned a lot about everything is important.
Mm-hmm.
Every little detail is important, and honestly, never take the answer until the answer is completely there. It is like you can't. I mean, George is very famous for West Memphis 3. A lot of the stuff that he did on that, and some of his points that he made in his book, some of the points that he makes in interviews, some of the points that he makes to us when we talk about it at the gym or people that are around. No one thought about. There's still people out there that truly think that these 3 guys did it, and just the points that he brings out is incredible. So,
and you know what's so funny is like the last podcast that we did, to bounce off that, we talked about how we were listening to different podcasts that actually solved crimes, that helped solve crimes.
Yes,
and it's like totally like mind blowing. Has anybody contacted you about anything? About that to help any situation? Or?
We've got a few on social media that's definitely been along those lines. I can't.
We're working on one right now. Yeah. Actually, we're doing interviews right now on one that's unsolved, and we think that there's a possibility we can help get that one solved. I mean, it's ironic, right? When we started our podcast, there was an arrest in Rebecca Gould's case, and I actually broke it to social media who it was, because it was somebody that I always call. Andrew's my podcast partner and my friend, and then I have my true crime partner who actually studies the cases with me, is Jennifer Buchholz. Mm-hmm. Her and I, the day before the guy got arrested, we were on to him, and we were texting back and forth, and we were really...
So were you to her or to him?
To him. Well, to her, but he was also messaging us through our Facebook page. Like, it was an unsolved case for 17 years, and the murderer, a guy who had never been arrested, never been charged, he joined our Facebook page, and he was commenting to us. In fact, this is ironic, Oxygen Channel actually did a story about our presentation at CrimeCon, and the story was specifically about him messaging us through those months, and he mostly direct messaged Jennifer because... I'll be honest with you, I don't get on social media as much as I used to. So like somebody would comment, she would comment to them on our page that we had dedicated to Rebecca's case. And so they would he would give theories about how the murderer committed the crime. And this is the dude who's been arrested for it.
And he's never been arrested.
No, and then he got arrested. Well, Oxygen Channel sent a reporter to CrimeCon to cover our presentation because it's sponsored by Oxygen.
Right.
And that story that they did actually trended #1 on the world on Twitter and Facebook for a day. That's crazy. And I think it was 3rd on Instagram, 3rd or 4th, something like that. But no, it was crazy. I will say this. The thing I've learned about doing this podcast with Andrew, there's one thing I've learned. There's absolutely nobody else in the world I'd want to do it with, because he takes care of all the production part. He's become a very good questioner. Like early on, we talked about, like, I've been a journalist for many years, so it's asking people questions is no problem for me. I mean, I've asked some people some really tough questions before.
Yeah.
And Andrew has really blossomed and developed in that aspect. And if you ever listen to his own podcast, Professionals, very good banter back and forth.
Right.
Very good. So that's the thing I learned from him is like, hey, you take care of everything else. I'll just come and blab for a few minutes, and then I leave, and everything gets taken care of.
And so, how did you do your research on how to do podcasting? Because I did everything by myself.
Man, there's this thing called YouTube.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
YouTube really, and then just kind of you pick up on podcasts you already like. You same thing with music, but with podcasting, you kind of discover what you like and how you like interviews to go. And what you want to hear from them. And also, when with true crime, when I'm with George, I realize I have to play like the, lack of a better word, dumbest audience member, right? Because
You're asking questions.
I'm ignorant to this world, and I just specifically with the Rebecca Gould case, where it's just there's so many questions that are left unanswered, and the question that I always have to ask in that case is just like, the dog was left, like, if it was a true killer that was unknown to everybody, that dog's dead. Like, that's the thing, like those types of things. And I just basically have to play like, well, why isn't the dog, like the easy questions, but it's the questions that I'm not saying that they overlook, but it's the questions because they have the information already for that. Right. They don't ask that, but that's the one where I'm like, well, I want to know, like, why was the dog left okay?
You know, and
why was the laundry on?
I'll say this, like with Andrew, because it's kind of funny to meet someone who's not into true crime pretty much at all, and that was him. So sometimes we would, like, I remember one time we were talking about the Elliott murders, I think we ended up re-recording that
Yeah,
episode.
we did that episode 2.5 times.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Was it just because of?
we didn't like it. There was just bad, so we just re-recorded it. But the funny thing was, the first recording, the look on Andrew's face when I started describing these murders, because they were horrific. It's one of the worst murder cases ever. Like, there's no. When I do book signings and give book lecture talks, I always say that the first chapter of my second book, The Creekside Bones, you've never seen a horror movie worse or read a Stephen King novel that is more horrific than what actually happened to a family of 4 in a little town called Dalton on a rainy July night. And his face, I mean, it was very genuine. You know, like you could see the blood draining out of his face, and he couldn't think of anything to ask because it was just so awful.
Yeah. But you know, the cool thing is though, is that you've been doing this for so long that you already have so much to talk about. Like, so there's never like a dull moment. There's no like any dead silence between both of you guys, or even if you're interviewing somebody.
Yeah.
Just recently, you just went down to Missouri to interview somebody, right? But like you have so much background with that, you know, about going back and forth or doing your job that it's endless.
Yeah.
And like, it sounds so terrible, but like covering true crime, it's not going to stop happening. You know what I mean? Like, there's something, and again, we don't say that for like, oh yeah, we got more to entertain the world with and try to, you know, make this a job. But it's more or less like, unfortunately, there are more victims whose stories need to be told and forewarnings and everything like that. And it's just so interesting to go with cases that George has covered. We've talked about many cases that he's covered, but then to realize, shifting forward into season 2, the unknown, us covering cases that he hasn't covered. There's something we'll still step back to, but there's a lot of new ones that are just mind-blowing, and being able to go over together and learn together. So that's strength, I guess.
You got it. So talk to me of like a night of recording with you guys. So walk me through the process. So say if a guest comes in, what do you have?
It starts usually with George saying, hey, I know that you're almost in bed, but I hate to do this, but we got something we got to record right now.
Okay.
So, and I have the most understanding wife on the planet. So.
That's cool. Yeah.
No, really though, the George has the information. He's always got everything typed out. He's got a script for the intro.
Okay.
And so he spends a lot of that research work, that behind the scene work that I just, cool. You got it ready? All right, good. I'll be there with the microphones and the buttons and then the mic levels. And then from there, it's really just kind of getting some mic levels. And George always starts it off and playing off of the case that he's going to cover that week. Or if there's a guest, we have ways to do over the phone or in person. We started this at the tail end of, obviously, COVID and quarantine. So our first little bit was over the phone, but we were lucky to start getting guests in there.
Yeah, we've actually had a couple of in-studio guests, which has been nice, and we're going to try to expand on that.
Yeah.
We both have vaccinated, so we're good to go.
Vaccinated, and like you said, we're lucky to have a studio through Legacy right now that's able to have more space and
thanks,
distance.
Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler.
And Courtney, who really runs the show here.
Yeah, for sure.
So what kind of questions you ask the guest? So when you're bringing a guest in, but this guest has correlation of what you're talking about, of course, right? So what kind of questions do you usually go for?
Well, this is what I always advise, like new journalists. You know, a lot of times they want to have a script, like they want to have 15 questions lined up, and they're just going to go right down the script. I tell them to scrap that approach. When you interview someone, you need to know the background of the person. You need to know why you're interviewing them. But if you've done your research, you don't need it written down on a piece of paper. For instance, we went and interviewed Doug Williamson, who is the husband of a woman who was murdered in Lubbock, Texas many years ago. He found her body. And it's an unsolved case to this day. So when we interviewed him, I had a sheet with notes on it. And as he's talking, I'm taking notes. Now, the notes I had on there were names of some of the people who were questioned in relation to her murder. Well, the only reason I had them written down was because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget the name or forget to ask about all of them, because you don't want to drive 2-3 hours like we did all over southern Missouri basically. And
with no cell reception.
With no cell reception.
Eating McDonald's on the side of the road.
That's what we were doing.
Two dudes in one Mustang.
We actually did.
Yeah, that's it. That's nice, right? That's a really happened.
Let's make this car sweaty.
Yeah, that's right. Right. But so I don't ever. You want to let the thing. It's organic. Like you want it to go. You want to let it go somewhere. because he knows I'm not there to talk to him about business or politics or agriculture, some of the other things I write about. He knows I'm there to talk about a murder. So
and he's not aggravated, but he's allowed, he's not hesitant to be interviewed.
No, this is another thing.
So you're asking. I'm sorry. You're asking him. He's not asking you, right?
Right.
Gotcha.
Well, kind of what one of my interview techniques is I try to find common ground with the person personally. And he and I happen to be born in the same town in Texas.
Yeah.
And his wife, or his former wife, who was murdered, was actually buried in the same cemetery as my grandparents. So, and he even actually found out after we left, I didn't tell you this, Andrew, he actually contacted several people and told them how much he enjoyed talking to us.
Cool. That's cool.
So because he was apprehensive, he had never met me before. He'd never met Andrew, obviously.
Right.
So he didn't know. I mean, he's
therapy.
he's a retired school teacher who just happens to be connected to a heinous murder that was profiled on Netflix on the Confession Killer series, and it's been an albatross in his life, obviously, around his neck, literally and figuratively in a way. So he didn't know me. I mean, you look me up on the internet, you're going to find a bunch of stuff, but I mean, I've been involved with a bunch of high-profile cases and politics and all sorts of stuff. So,
how do you get connected with these cases? Do you have a certain someone you talk to? Can you talk about it?
Oh yeah. A lot of times they come to me. That's in this case. The sister of the murder victim actually approached someone who was connected to my partner and I, my true crime partner Jennifer and I, and we, after CrimeCon, we went down and spoke in early June about Rebecca's case. And when we got done, we had several people approach us about cases, and so I told her, I said, okay, we've got 3 or 4 around the country. You pick one, and we'll do it. We'll study it. We'll go on the ground for a week or 2. We'll do whatever we can do. We don't know if we can help solve any crime or anything like that. We just, my goal is to shine as much light on a case as I possibly can, because I've had several that I've covered through the years that were completely unsolved and never solved. And the difference was, to me, in my estimation, was the fact that the media, which was a large part with me, was writing stories for newspapers, was getting it on TV, was getting it onto TV shows like Still a Mystery on the Discovery Channel. And I've done all that stuff. The BBC, been on there. So it's just the white hot light of public scrutiny. And so I feel like in this case, in Debbie's case, I know somebody out there knows something. And I feel like if we just keep ramming this on social media and everything else and through regular media channels, that eventually something's going to happen. I told Dr. Gould 5 years ago, who is Rebecca Gould's father, in her murder case, he asked me one night, he said, what can we do to get my daughter's case solved? It's been, at that point, it was 12 years. I said, Doc, we just got to keep pounding. We got to keep writing stories. We got to keep it in the news. And that's when Helen Gone came a year later and they were Catherine Townsend's podcast, and she worked at the Discovery Channel.
Right.
And so anyway, that's kind of my approach. Like Andrew said, we don't lack for subject matter because there's plenty out there.
So if it's just you guys doing the podcast, do you ask them questions? Are you curious about something? How does a show between you guys go?
So it started out basically that we're covering cases that George has had a big part of. Now, it was originally going to be cases that he's covered and in the strange and weird as well as murder. It wasn't going to be just true crime. But like he said, the week we were getting ready to start recording, we've already recorded 1 or 2 episodes. The William Miller stuff broke during the Rebecca Gould case, and it just completely shifted our dynamic.
You're saying that.
And I don't even think we were going to do a Rebecca Gould.
He wanted to wait a season. He was, not that he was tired of talking about the Rebecca Gould murder. It was just that he wanted to put that on a back burner, and then it turned into what happened and what fortunately happened as far as they convicted somebody, which was great. Somebody confessed. So, and going forward with that, being able to keep updates with that, and them being so in touch with what was going on through social media, that's what kind of dynamically changed it. But if it was not those type of cases, really the dynamic would be he's got a case that we want to discuss. He's laying down the groundworks of that case. If we have a guest that's involved in that case, we talk to them. And usually the 2 type of guests, we either have a specialist who's somebody who can add light to the case or has some kind of investigation to the case, or it's a family member or victim who, like he talked about with Doug Williamson, it's going to be somebody who's asking questions to either help solve this murder or at least shine light on how the family was, an inside look on the personal levels of it. So the questions kind of change depending on who we're talking to.
Yeah. Okay. And what the case is about. Basically.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. But it's so funny though, because you didn't really know anything about the crime, So it's just now it's just like it's just something that kind of struck in you that was like a striking like interest.
It was and it wasn't, if that makes any sense. So it was before when we talked about it, it was like I went on Facebook, I put a status up, hey, need some information on true crime podcast. Give me your best episodes. Give me your best, give me your best series, and then give me the best episode of that series. Mm-hmm. And so we did that. I listened to about 10 of them back to back to back to back to back, and then had to watch literally episodes of Full House on TV, like to digress and not think about horror and crime and just the horrificness of humanity. Mm-hmm. So it made me really appreciate what true crime podcasting is. It's legitimately investigation. It's truly a form of amateur investigation that has led to some crazy solvings of murders. Like the Murder Squad, which is a podcast. It's not like an amateur one by any means, but they actually have updates where cases have been, at least leads have been found.
Yeah.
Just by them putting it on the podcast and being like that photo. There's a photo that my friend's aunt posted in 2018, but it was from 1992, and this person's in it and stuff like that.
It was like one of the killers that was in it.
The victim, and then the people who were around the time that their death and stuff like that. That's just a scenario that I've heard before, and it's truly an investigation that's beyond jurisdiction because they're able to use social media to find information.
The guy that does Murder Squad is Paul Holes. He's the detective who discovered the Golden State Killer. And actually, we were on Murder Squad about Rebecca's case.
Really?
In fact,
him and Jennifer, not me.
Because they wanted to interview us about Rebecca's case. The arrest happened in between the two episodes that they dropped on the case. They did a 2-part series, which is rare. They don't normally do 2 parts, but they're probably the most popular true crime podcast in the country.
That or what's the Crime Junkie? Them two probably compete back and forth.
Crime Junkie's probably more like raw popular as far as numbers, maybe, but they're probably the most respected true crime podcast.
And again, when I by no means am I like jabbing at Crime Junkie, but they have a certain dynamic that they do, and then there's other ones that they have a certain dynamic that almost make it too entertaining, in my opinion. Take that with a grain of salt, world. I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but that's, you know what I mean? Like,
every show has a different dynamic. Yeah. I have a different dynamic. Like, some of the podcasts I listen to is literally just off the walls, badass crazy. It's just like, but it's hilarious. Like, I love comedy podcasts, dude.
Yeah,
I love laughing. Like, my wife will make fun of me. Like, she's in there watching Virgin River or something like that on Netflix. Shout out, good show. And I'm listening to one of my podcasts, and I'm like howling. And she's like, she's muting. She's like, can you really right now? And I'm like, I'm crying over there. But anyways, dude, I love it. So I kind of want to go back and I want to talk about Comic-Con.
Yes.
Because we talked earlier in the gym this morning. That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because I used to perform in high school. I was a drummer for my church, right? Yeah. And not performing. Sorry, at church. You're not performing. I was doing it for God and everything. All that, but it was still got a little bit of a rush when you played in front of a crowd, right? Yeah. I was in a band in high school that performed every once in a while, like for my high school. Like this, there was like a senior project kind of thing, and I guess we got to play in front of like 200 people. But as high schoolers, it was like we were like, oh, we probably were playing our songs way too fast, but it was just it gave me goosebumps, just thinking about it. So I want to ask you, you drive down there. Right, check into a hotel. What's your itinerary look like?
Well, what we did is I checked in. It was the night before we were going to give our presentation.
And back off from the presentation. He spoke. That's why I was talking about the goosebumps. I'm sorry.
Yes. And so what happened was my partner was already down there. I tried to drag this guy down there, but he had some commitments.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky. Yeah. Yeah. So she wanted to practice. Mm-hmm. So her and her husband already checked in. I said, okay, let's practice our presentation, because we didn't realize this when they asked us to speak.
Yeah.
We were actually going to be the opening act for the entire convention. Mm-hmm. And they had Dr. Phil, they had Nancy Grace, they had Chris Henson from, To Catch a Predator.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude was there. And the list of people there, I mean, I could go on and on. Normally, I'll just mention those 2 or 3 just because those are the ones that pretty much everybody knows. But there's so many people in the true crime world who are there. And so we go down, and we're in the hotel room. And I'm not gonna lie, we're just sitting there having a couple of beers. Her and I were just going back and forth on our presentation. And her husband Jesse's out wandering around this gigantic hotel, and he found the ballroom where we were going to be presenting. And he goes, hey, he texted me. He's like, hey, you guys want to go down there? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so we go down there, and she doesn't think it's the right room. She's like, there's no way we're presenting in this room because there were chairs as far as you could see. It was unbelievable. And he's like, no, this is where you're going to do it. So we asked the guys, because they were setting up. This is around 11, 12 o'clock at night. All the sound guys, there was a full crew in there setting this thing up. Like, they were working all night long. And so we got on the stage, practiced, no big deal. So the next day, we know we're getting ready to come on around noon. We're backstage. I didn't realize how many people were in there.
And you're hearing the chatter.
Yeah, well, they were playing a montage video of all the speakers, of the cases that were going to be covered throughout the entire thing.
Okay. Emotions. What were you feeling right there?
I was a little shocked how good it was. I mean, I had no expectation. I'd never been to a crime con. I'd never spoken at one. Come to find out, it's the largest crime conference in the world. And so I'm sitting there watching this montage, and every time a case would come up that, like they showed, for instance, they showed the Golden State Killer at one point for some reason.
Yeah.
Crowd explodes. And like you could feel the energy like reverberate. And I'll say this, I speak publicly a lot.
Yeah.
I've been on a lot of TV shows and a lot of other stuff. I'm not intimidated at all by speaking in public. But I started getting a little goosebumpy. And I even told Jesse, because he was back there with us, that's Jennifer's husband, I said, hey, get a shot of her and I just from behind, just looking at these cameras. Because it was really an experience, and I wanted to document it. I wanted to remember it.
Right.
And I didn't know it at the time. There were armed guards all over the place, like walking out with, like they were in the arena. I mean, I did see some police officers, but I didn't realize they were like right behind us in the shadows.
Yeah.
And so we go out on stage, and the place just explodes. And it was exhilarating. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's a thing, and we gave our presentation. It went off without a hitch. And then the fortunate thing for us is we presented first, so we got to pick and choose every presentation after that we wanted to go to. I'm not going to lie. Dr. Phil, I thought I'd hate his, but I actually really liked it,
You went to his presentation?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And we had to go into this like a VIP room where people pay lots of money to hobnob with all these people that are in. There was one guy that was in there. If you ever saw The Night Stalker, the Netflix series The Night Stalker, it's a true crime true crime series. There's a detective in there, and he was the main detective on the Night Stalker case. He was just sitting there having a round table when I walked in. And so we go in there, sign autographs, pass out cards, take pictures with people, do that kind of,
That's
cheesy hobnobbing thing. But people pay thousands of dollars to go in there. I saw Chris Henson in there, he was in there hanging out with people. And, so anyway.
How would you all talk for?
Presentation was about an hour.
An hour? Okay.
Yeah, and it was her and I went back and forth. Like I kind of gave the color.
Did you both go up at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
Our presentation was.
Does it make it easier when you guys go up together, like go up and present with another person to like bounce off ideas, or because you guys practiced it, I guess.
We did. It's not actually. In a way, I thought it was harder.
Okay.
Because I've given.
You're gonna stop somewhere and then.
Right, and here's the thing: when you're up there, you're just talking. So even Jennifer said, and I have a real bad habit of this, I will just go into other areas, and it might be an area that she was going to talk about. Well, I've compromised her. I didn't do it too badly, but when you're used to doing it yourself, like I've taught 6 and 7 hour long classes to teachers about creative writing and investigative journalism. So I've created, I'm up at the front of a classroom for 6 or 7 hours reciting something that I've put together.
Yeah.
So, but the thing about it is, the best piece of advice I give anybody in the world is you always surround yourself with people who are way smarter and way better than you, and it always makes you look better. Hence why I partnered with Andrew Brown on my podcast. And Jennifer is, she's a master.
And if you want to listen to that presentation, it's our season finale of Diamond State season 1.
Yeah, we're not
so
plugging that or anything. Yeah, you can listen to it.
You can listen to it there.
That's cool.
But anyway, but yeah, if I was going to have to do it again, she'd be the person I'd pick to do it.
Yeah, definitely. You guys bounce off each other pretty well. But,
Ian.
Yes.
Do you listen to anything true crime? Are you in the world of true crime at all?
Dude, I can't. Really, I just, like I said, my main niche is really comedy.
Cool.
You know, dude, this is what I wanted to do, be a comedy show, but I'm not funny. Well, I kind of like an all-around show. Like, there's some funny parts here and there, but like I said, dude, I just kind of talk about anything, really. Like, I'm glad that you guys are here, and you guys are very interesting people. I was like, okay, I need that on my show, you know?
Yeah.
So, no. I know it's a long answer, but no.
It was funny though.
Yeah.
So
you do. We talked about this earlier. You know, professionals.
yes, that's mine. That's my baby.
You guys are taking a break, and you're doing a show with the professionals. So let's go ahead and plug that.
Right on. Yeah, professionals. Ian's been on it. It's a movie themed podcast where I talk to people in our local area, which is Jonesboro, Arkansas, and they're a professional in some form of field, and we sit down and they watch a movie that I recommend to them that has to do with their field of study or their profession or their, an interest even. And then from there, we discuss the accuracy of the film, the accuracy of the actor playing the character. We discuss if it was, shed a light well on this job or this hobby. And we just really critique it, and it's a lot of fun. It's been cool. We've got 3 episodes out now.
3 episodes, and who are they with?
2 guys in this room.
Okay.
And then another young lady. I got a few more coming up. They're all right now. I got 3 more with Jake Gyllenhaal, and then we're going to branch away, and then it's going to be...
Which I think is a great idea, man, because he's in a lot of good movies.
Well, he's a chameleon, man. Like, he's
really
an actor who plays
Yes.
so many different hats, and then... I work at a gym, so there's going to be a few sports/gym themed ones coming up, and it's going to be good. Well, when Diamond State comes back in the fall, we'll take 3 weeks of Diamond State, and then that 4th week will be a bonus episode of the Professionals, and then go back to Diamond State.
Okay.
So we got a great plan for, if you like the Professionals, that's awesome. It's not going away in the fall, and then if you're waiting for Diamond State, it'll be back in the fall full force with a lot of new cool stuff.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, thanks for listening, guys. I'm sorry. Plug whatever you got going on, and we already plugged you. So plug what you got going on there.
The only other thing I've got going on right now is I've got my first foray into fiction, a novel, Wait. So far, all the reviews have been really good. I've been shocked.
Good.
So I mean,
What you want to hear from a professional? I've been shocked how good I am.
No, I mean, the one thing is like when you write about subject matter that's like fact based.
Yeah.
You just have to get the facts right.
Right.
When you're creating something completely on your own.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know if it's going to be good or not. Your mom tells you it's good, but how accurate is she, right? Can't trust you, Mom.
Yeah. My mom doesn't listen to this.
No, good. My mom probably won't either, but I don't know. You never know. She pops up in the strangest places. I did a story with Asa Hutchinson earlier this week, the governor of Arkansas. He was talking about COVID and the explosion of the Delta variant. And I did a story. This is a politics story in Arkansas. My mom lives in Texas. And the story posts onto the Talk Business Politics website where I work, and the first comment on it is from her. I'm like, what? So anyway.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. Well, she said I did a great job, but how reliable is that? Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys. This is your host with Well That Sucked podcast. And if you like the show, please like and subscribe. YouTube, on Instagram, and Facebook.
What's this podcast called?
Well, that's something.
Okay, cool.
Did I say that?
Because it sucked.
Oh, I said, well, that sucked?
Yeah.
It used to be, well, that sucked, but don't look that up, because that sucks. No, it's called Well, That's Something Podcast. I always do that every single time.
I don't want to call you out.
I know,
I want
I'm
people
glad
not
you
to
did.
find
Hey,
you.
this is nobody gives a crap.
See, this is why he's a great producer. He's always
It's just
on
like
top
when
of
we did your show,
Yeah.
and you're like, and you said I'm direct. I was like, that's okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, I know.
I will say it when
I said it so many times.
But
I keep
you had
calling
the
you a
funniest- You had the
soldier.
funniest reaction, dude. I was like, you're like, you served in Afghanistan? I said, yeah. And you went, I said Iraq. You took your hat off and you threw it at the wall.
I know, man. I felt like a dumb. I wanted to be so professional,
Oh, no.
and I completely screwed that up. I did an episode with Tana Chastain about pharmaceutical sales, and halfway through she's like, "Yeah, because this movie we're talking about is based off this book," and I'm like, "It's based off a book." Apparently, I do no research where I find
You're like,
it.
oh.
And that might be part of because sometimes I don't want him to do research on cases we're going to do because if we have a guest, I want his genuine, reaction.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
like Andrew always says, he's being deferential to himself when he says this. He's not asking the dumb person question. He says it all the time. That's not true.
It's just curiosity.
What he's asking is what the average person sitting in their car or sitting at home doing whatever they're doing when they listen to a podcast. It's the questions that pop into their heads. And he fills that role really well, and maybe part of the professionals, maybe that's what's going on.
My problem too is I look up the most not important information to the film, like the weekend grosses, how much it cost, like who was the first 2 actor choices before before JJ, like, which is cool to me, but probably not interesting, as opposed to being like, wait,
you're wrong. I look at the same stuff, man. Before I came with you guys, I was watching a show about facts about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and I promise you, I could have made a better top 10 fact list than what they had. Yeah, so I listen to that stuff too.
Well, you heard it there. Listen to Diamond State and the Professionals. This is Something Podcast. Zero Steen Hilton, and stay tuned for next time. Hit that red button, please, sir.